All right, let's get going. We'll try and keep this interactive. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, wave, jump up and down, anything you like. We're going to sort of skip the long introductions and self-promotional comments. I do have about I do have about 25 slides about my own company, cleverly called Gershon Media. So we'll go through those, and then if there's time left, we'll have our panelists say a couple of words. Just quickly introduce Rebecca Donahue from Vin DeBona Productions. Chris Younger is right there from Eisenberg. I knew I'd screwed up. Jeff Skaggs from Fullscreen, and Brad Gelfond for a principal with Strike Up the Band. And we'll let you guys, as we get going, talk about sort of what you do and how you work with the YouTube ecosystem. But I thought we'd dive right in with a question. It goes back a little bit in time. In August 1981, who here was even alive then? In August 1981, well before the internet, MTV aired its first music video. It was a British group called the Buggles. Can anyone tell me the name of that song? No.
Video Killed the Radio Star, yeah.
Video Killed the Radio Star.
Yeah.
Video Killed the Radio Star.
The gentleman in the back.
Yeah.
Video Killed the Radio Star is correct. Money
Free
for
bottle of
nothing
water
is a
right
good
here.
try.
Free bottle of water right there. Cheers.
Okay, so that first song that premiered
Yes,
on
come on up.
MTV that in fact kicked off MTV in 1981 was Video Killed the Radio Star. So you might be saying to yourselves, what the hell does that have to do with YouTube and why we're here today? Well, now in 2015, that's the year, right? 2015, 10 years after the launch of YouTube, my question to you panelists, is Facebook killing the YouTube star? Rebecca, start with you.
It may. I think it remains to be seen.
You can move the mic closer so you're comfy.
It feels like there's a lot of space here. We've got a man down, but we're going to survive. It's a tough panel.
I'll get closer.
So it may. I think that remains to be seen. I think.
Well, Facebook is certainly got more mobile usage than YouTube
That's right.
overall. I mean, not just on video. As far as video goes, Facebook's doing, last count, 5-6 billion video views a day. Again, you could argue auto start versus self start or whatever. But let's just say they're sort of close in daily video views. So when I talk about killing the YouTube star, I mean sort of the star of the YouTube business as a whole, and the video views and the ad revenue ecosystem, and then even down to, are they going to be stealing the people who today are YouTube stars? Brad,
Well, don't forget.
move your mic closer.
Don't forget.
We're live streaming this to billions and billions of people.
Don't forget that YouTube search engine is the #2 search engine, and that's really, really key here in this equation.
I'll try to take
Okay.
a quick salvo it for you. So on our business, we manage a lot of brands that deal with what are to have conversations with their audience and their consumers. So your question's great, which is, how is Facebook managing video, and really maybe take that a step back, and how are they managing the algorithms to actually reach your audience? So if native advertising on Facebook is where Facebook is telling you to create your video, then your platform better promote the search and ability to reach your consumers with that video in the same native and organic way that YouTube is offering it. So I see it as two different journeys. I see YouTube being very much a discovery platform, to your point about search, and I see Facebook very much an engagement platform because I'm looking in my feed and how you interact with it. So the consumer interaction of a lean back or lean forward also is another way we kind of talk about it with our clients. But in general, the challenge Facebook is having, or video might be having within Facebook, is the video being reached and being syndicated to the consumer they want to get to, and how is that relationship you want to have with it, right? Engaged or from a discovery-driven.
But so in the case of YouTube and search, I have to know that I'm looking for Larry David as Bernie Sanders, or I have to know that I'm looking for the Fine Brothers. Whereas Facebook is like, if I've clicked like on something before, or I've liked your funny comments, I'm going to get more stuff fed to me. Is that not a better experience for the consumer?
But YouTube's the same way. I mean, you subscribe to your favorite creators. You subscribe to the Fine Brothers channel, and you know when they're uploading a new video, you get contacted about that. And I think that's a big way of how they've taken advantage of these subscribers to drive organic video distribution across the YouTube platform. I would say, I mean, Facebook obviously has made huge waves when it comes to the total amount of videos that they're serving now. But as a entertainment and a programming platform, and as a platform that enables creators, I think until Facebook comes up with a way, you know, similar to the rev share that creators are enjoying on YouTube, and then finding a way to move away from, as you mentioned, the autoplay silent video into a way that's just more engaging and more in line with the way that people are consuming content on YouTube, that's where Facebook can really, you know, come after YouTube.
I also think that creators who tap into the way Facebook was built, and it was sort of built around identity, right? You have this profile, you want to share things that make you look good to your friends. There are certain outlets, certain companies, BuzzFeed is a good example, that will be able to exploit that. And then there are others that it may just not be the most organic platform for.
Yeah, and it's interesting just sort of how much progress and how much has changed in the 10 years that YouTube was around. Chad Hurley, what's Chen's first name? Steve?
Tony.
No, not Tony.
Tony Chen?
No, the guy, the founder of YouTube. Anyway, the YouTube founders in 2005 was before
Chad Hurley.
Chad Hurley and anyway, doesn't matter. We'll get it later. We'll Google it. But 2005 was before the first iPhone came out. So obviously, ton now more usage and of the content, whether it's Facebook video or YouTube or sort of any of the other forms on smartphones. Before we go with some more questions, just be interesting so we can make the panel as engaging and interesting and useful to the folks here in the room. You appear to be awake. It's 10 o'clock Monday morning. Beautiful view outside. So kind of a show of hands, I'd just like to know sort of what sort of bucket your business falls in. Are you content creators? Okay. Marketers, agencies, tied to advertising. Investors. Okay. Any other buckets, big buckets I missed? What?
Is that all three?
All three. Okay, so yes, all three. Consumer research. Okay, it's a good one too. All right, so speaking of the consumer and getting more money out of them, there are some reports, and I saw one on Recode the other day, that YouTube will be announcing this Wednesday a subscription programming service, which kind of like everybody who doesn't have a subscription service, but YouTube, again, they've already launched their YouTube. Sorry?
Times. They've announced it like 12 times.
So they're supposedly announcing again. They announced in August, they announced that YouTube Gaming would be a competitor to Twitch. Supposed to be announcing this programming service. YouTube will continue to operate its free ad-supported version of the site, and has said that all the videos that appear on the free site will be available on the paid version, which is why YouTube, again, this is according to the Recode report, YouTube is insisting that all video makers who make money from YouTube ads need to participate in this subscription service as well. So, Jeff, what is your feeling on that? And are the creators, whether it's the Fine Brothers or whoever else, are part of the sort of the full screen network? Will they be participating in this service? Is this report true? How much money are you making, and how much money do you have in your pocket right now?
I mean, I think it's no surprise of what you just mentioned of why everybody is launching an SVOD platform, because that's where you see the shift in consumption happening, especially within the millennial demographic and the cord cutting that's happening across the board. So of course everybody's not just looking for ways to create ways to deliver their programming off of platforms like YouTube, but YouTube is also understanding that they're going to need to have a solution for that as they move forward, and as you see these creators starting to go across different platforms.
So are full screen contributors, or whatever you call the people who produce content, sort of as part of the full creators, thank you, are they part of this service?
I mean, a lot of the full screen creators are some of the top creators on the entire platform. Like you mentioned, the Fine Brothers and Grace Helbig and Shane Dawson, I mean, to name a few. So of course, they're going to be affected by any type of SVOD platform that YouTube creates because they have such a huge presence there. I mean, we've announced that Fullscreen is launching our own SVOD platform that should be launching, well, I'm not going to say when, but we have announced that we are launching it, and we also just launched the SVOD platform for Rooster Teeth, which is a big channel within Fullscreen. So, I mean, I think we'll definitely have a big involvement in the SVOD for YouTube as well.
Jeff, let's get back to sort of what some of the individuals here are doing as it comes to SVOD. Let's talk a little bit more, Brad, if you would tell me sort of, are the people you're representing, the creators you represent, are they participating in this subscription service? It sounds like
Yes.
it sounds like they have a gun to their head and there's sort of like you either participate or you can't even play with the free service. And then what's your point of view? Good, bad idea, fantastic, love it?
I don't think anyone really feels like there's so much of a gun to their head. I mean, they want to be part of it. YouTube is certainly, in most of the people I work with's case, their primary platform. So, I think it's just sort of part of the evolution.
Can you pull the mic a little bit closer?
It's part of the evolution of the platform. So I think
Thanks.
everyone seems to sort of feel like that's the way it's going, and they're a part of it. So. I haven't felt too much pushback from my people.
And Chris, if it's going to be a ad-free service and you work with a ton of marketers,
Well,
selling
actually, yeah,
movies or whatever.
the solution we take is a little bit different. We work a lot with my colleague here to the left in spending ad dollars on MCNs and spending ad dollars directly with talent. For our clients, the model we're going after is there's that 5% that are being scraped. There's a lot of creators here in the room that are trying to get that relationship with brands and also trying to develop that business acumen and know-how. For us, that 95% is really important and underserviced. So for us, we've been spending the last, 4 years developing and building out ion.co, so an influencer orchestration network. You can go there now. If you're a creator, you can sign up now. If you're a brand, you can go in there and engage now about how to build out a platform or build out a brand that allows the brand to own the relationship with the creators and allow the creators to own relationships with the brand. There's no longer benefit for us being a middleman necessarily with a lot of our clients that they buy a program and then next quarter they ask to buy it again and everything goes up 10%. So we're having trouble managing budget and managing performance, and that's my other area of it too. There's the modeling of revenue, and there's the modeling of performance, and more now the performance coming in with these creators is equal to that of DRTV or radio or any of your online and digital platforms. So everything has to be accountable in the ecosystem. So I'm trying to also create a solution that isn't just a siloed inventory buy, it's actually an integrated performance. So there's a lot of layers to that question, but for knowing a lot of the group here is creators, I get these gentlemen are definitely equipped with understanding the creator relationship. I'm dealing with it more from the brand side and the challenges they're facing with the creators.
You dive, without getting too deep into it, dive a little bit deeper into the problems you're having with budget and performance, and what are sort of the top 2 or 3 metrics, obviously, for a budget. You want to know how much money you have.
So I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3 core
Yep.
ones because everything always comes in 3s. The
Except the 10 commandments,
one,
but
yeah, one is the for most of the clientele we're dealing with, it's everyone's dealt with. They either A, have bought once a relationship with an influencer, or 2, bought a program with an MCN or an inventory type of relationship with a network. For most of our clients, number 1 is scale. So I want to, if I do it once, just like any other media vehicle, they ultimately want to go to scale. So they test, great, let's do it and scale on out. So how do I scale hundreds, if not thousands of influencers? That's one. That's a relationship. So that's closely aligned to 2, management. So how do I actually manage them? How do I activate and connect and get the journey with them to be a persistent, ongoing relationship? My brand is always on. My influencers are always on. How do I have that ongoing relationship? And then 3 is actually strategy. So there's a ton of conferences. This one will tackle it as well, which is all about authenticity. How do I give them the ability to create that isn't just a byproduct of a brief from a brand, but it's a byproduct from the listening platform of what the consumers are saying, what their audiences are saying about the brand, so that they're actually generating something that is a lot higher level of engagement. Millennial target audiences consumption within these type of connected platforms is in above 50%, almost as high as 70-80% in certain areas. It's really critical. So management, scale, and at the end of the day, the strategy, having it on brand, on strategy. So if I'm creating something in MCN, how does that dotted line hard code into all my other media vehicles so that I actually have something to measure and drive performance against?
So when you go back to client X, you say, okay, this worked well on YouTube with this creator because of what 3 things?
Well, that's just it. It's not X. X is the whole platform. So instead of putting the burden on looking at, so what happens is, you get this all the time, Jeff, right? Give me your list of influencers. Then you get to 10, and then all right, how many subscribers they have, what's the overall content look like, and you're trying to pick. We've gone a completely different direction. I'm done picking talent. I actually want to look at the whole ecosystem, hundreds of them at once. And there's tier 1, and there's tier 4, and everything in between. So then we're actually not fixated anymore about the individual talent creator, and I'm not fixated anymore necessarily at the actual content, the individual content. I'm interested in scale. So a metric, successful metric, is what hundreds do we have working that have raised their hand, right? You've actually raised your hand and said, I'm interested in your brand. So for most of the clients we talk about is building a beacon. Mattel, Marriott, Microsoft, build a beacon that says, you're welcome to talk to us about your relationship with us. We'd love for you to be an ambassador. I don't mind if you have 10 subscribers or 10 million. Come and join us and manage that. And that approach has become extremely successful, extremely welcoming to actually develop a relationship than just and then necessarily, and there's nothing wrong with the model. We do a ton of work with MCNs. We just worked with Jeff yesterday on a program, thank you. And we do a ton of work in those areas. But how do I continually make sure I'm managing budgets efficiently that actually have predictive building and scale and management so that I can actually keep my clients' overall dollars performing at a high level? So we're looking at it a little bit differently, and it's because we've been doing it a very long time.
Okay, Rebecca, do you have any thoughts on the YouTube SVOD service? And are you participating, or you're?
Yeah, we're not, because what we do is we are the creators of America's Funniest Home Videos. So we are really a volume play. We're really an archived library of new and content. We have every video submitted to AFE since 1989. So it's a lot of what you see out there in the viral video space, and it's less independent creator based. So really kind of a different thing, if you ask me. Will we eventually participate in it? Probably, if that's the way it's going, but we are not as of now.
So does your company, Vin DeBono Productions, do you look at YouTube more as a marketing platform for America's Funniest Home Videos, or a way to make money or create branded content or something else?
That's a great question. We look at it, it's twofold. We look at it as a total marketing and exposure play, and it's very organic for us. We don't need ad buys because we are the content that the internet was based on. I basically have a library of hundreds of thousands of cat videos and fails and babies, So, and then the second thing is to create new product. So we will often partner with.
There's a whole show about groin shots.
That's
anyway.
right. We could do groin hits over and over, and have. And then the other play would be to create new product, and there we would partner with creators. And for us, and I think that this is the way intelligent production companies are going. For us, the definition of talent is expanding, and I don't mean, watering down the quality. I mean people who are behind the camera are very interesting talent partnerships for us. People who edit, people who write, people who direct, things like that.
So it's interesting you mentioned cat videos. Over the last 10 years, so I think YouTube has sort of taken a lot of heat for sort of being, cat videos and rollerblading, squirrels, etc. But if you look at the Forbes list of the top 10 YouTube creators and how much money they're making, and PewDiePie is pulling in $12 million a year, Smosh and the Fine Brothers are tied at $8.5 million, Michelle Phan with $13 million, Roman Atwood $2.5 million. I mean, in any world, that's real money. And again, I understand your point about not making fun of cat videos, but I think that
a lot of money in cat videos.
There was, but it's not as much money as PewDiePie or some of these people who are, call them talent, or call them they've got something that generates subscribers. So what I would kind of ask you guys, and maybe come back to Rebecca, what happened to cat videos and girls on trampolines? How did YouTube become a center of actual quality video?
Well, the partner program, that's exactly what was intended when our founder, George Snoupoulos, was part of creating the partner program on YouTube. And so they first invested $100 million across 100 channels, and the whole idea was to give them more tools to make better content, more premium content, and to build businesses around this. And now, as you've seen that grow, that's why you have people like PewDiePie. That's why you had the Fine Brothers, who have been able to create revenue that's allowed them to create a whole production team around them that has created shows that are, arguably the most popular on the YouTube platform and are now being developed for True TV and for Nickelodeon. So I think that right there is the epitome of what the partner program was intended to do and how it's played out over the past 10 years.
Brad?
I know you're talking about talent in cat videos. So the analogy we use a lot at when we're internally, and I know this is being live streamed, so hopefully I don't get caught later. But we talk about Tinder and eHarmony a lot. So you've got Tinder just left swiping or right swiping, looking at talent and trying to be getting a date for kind of a quick hookup, and it's just. That just doesn't work as much or really at all for the clients we're dealing with, and more about eHarmony. So we're trying to use more of a data science and in the relationship-based notion of how do you get attributions to your brand and parallels that connect with it to actually refer to a lot of our side about soulmates. There are people that have genuine qualities against qualities, whether I'm doing automotive or surfing or hospitality. The amount of influencers out there and the tool sets that are available now to actually define talent that everyone goes to that top line list to begin with, to your question. And that is just not a realistic list, or they're looking to try to aspire to that list. And it's building from a different direction. So we're trying to build, I'm looking at it more of a relationship now than just a piece of inventory. And you know what? That's what they want. They don't want to be looked at as just a bought piece this week, this month, right? They want something, and Jeff's team does a good job. They're scrutinizing, saying, is this within the value and the brand archetype? So I'm trying to move away from that Tinder model and moving really more into the eHarmony type of model, if that makes sense.
No, I love the analogy.
I think also what you see is the migration away from the sort of anonymous cat kind of videos. You have these YouTube personalities that have developed, and they've, for whatever reason, because of the way the platform has evolved, you have these creators that have sort of created this authentic relationship with their fans, and that kind of connection you can't get with just sort of anonymous cat videos or groin shots or whatever the other that it's more of a there's more of a connection, an emotional connection there. And that I think is the strength of the platform, is that you have all of these people that have these individual whatever their shtick is, they've evolved, and you have a wide variety of possibilities for people to connect with.
So you represent a bunch of YouTube creators. Sort of what is the secret sauce, if you will, when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I juggle, or I whatever, I sing and dance in the shower, or I play basketball, or I watch video games, or whatever." What do you say, or what do you look for? I mean, it's a little bit like finding talent for movies, but what do you look for that sort of says to you, "Okay, I can help this person, and I can ultimately make some money from my business"?
I think both those things come into play. Do I think I can do something? Can I add some value to them? And my background is as a talent agent, so sort of I have that kind of talent sort of searching in my background, and so I look for things that interest me. I find things that I think people will connect with. I look for people that I think are really, really talented in some capacity, and I also look for people where I think there's something that I can add, some value that I can add, in some way that I think their career can evolve in a sort of upward trajectory.
So Jeff, you mentioned the $100 million that YouTube put into a couple of years ago. A lot of it was sort of big name. They had Ashton Kutcher and Jay-Z and a bunch of other big names, and generally that was sort of perceived to be. And I'm saying generally perceived to be a failure. So what piece of that, you're saying, obviously a piece of it worked, what piece of that worked, and what are some of the, if you can name them, some of the creators that came out of that, or how did it sort of start the move from, we'll go back to the line, cat videos to, I would call it quality entertainment?
Well, I mean, I think it started the wave of an investment in these creators and really empowering them to continue doing what they're doing, but do it better and do it on a larger scale. And as I mean, I think that if you look at even the top list of everyone that you're naming off there, everybody benefited from that investment eventually. I think every every example that you can have of a successful creator on the YouTube platform has benefited from this partner program. And even if that initial investment, arguably wasn't successful, just the idea of how it built into sharing of revenue, across AdSense and different ways as they're building audiences and accumulating views on their channels, that's where you start to see a lot of these creators that were getting this revenue that then, as I mentioned, enabled them to hire their own crews, hire their own production capabilities, and basically build companies on top of this that have now made them what they are today.
So Chris, you mentioned data, and obviously data sort of falls into a ton of buckets around how you market and manage and grow this talent. And we've all read stories and heard the stories about how Netflix used data to decide to do House of Cards and the talent. And I've heard people from Amazon talk about some similar ways that they've used data to say, okay, we're going to green light show X or Y. So sorry to make the question so long, but sort of in the broadest sense, how do you use the data about what people are interested in, what talent will do well, to sort of help guide your campaigns? And then I'll ask the rest of the the rest of the panel, sort of how data plays into what you do. And then I got a third data question after that.
All right, so I'll try to get through that quickly. So one thing that started the journey for us, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, was a conference we were running, and there was a huge debate with influencers and just creators in general, and this discussion around whether or not they're journalists or endorsers. And half the room was split. Half the room thought most of these creators on YouTube and Vine and even bloggers were journalists, and the other half was endorsement. And at the end of the day, in telling you now and where we look at it, it's all product endorsement. It's native advertising and endorsing product, natively bringing it within the discussion they have. These people did not go to journalist school. Most of them are not from that background, or nor are they capturing it. So that was a first interesting barrier that we never really realized till we actually had a lot of discussions. So going from the lens that these individuals, these groups, these networks, how do I parse data? So most of the tech that's built today is built by someone that actually comes from tech. So they're not from the perspective of brand or from a perspective of an advertiser. So we've spent an enormous amount of money, I hate to admit, on licensed technology across the board. Radiant 6s, Hootsuite, CSIMOs, we third-party unified to validate data, and we've been doing it now for 4 or 5 years. So we've gone ahead and actually created our own platform to try to take the best of what's needed to help provide analytics for our clients. So I'm using the social science nature of listening. We listen right now about 80 million so are in community. We manage communities for Xbox. We manage communities for a number of our clients that allow us to allow that muscle memory to be built about how do I listen. Listening is really hard to do. So listening and bringing out data points that are important to figure out what's important to our client's brand. So specific statistics or specific analytics, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I'll start with views. We're no longer, views are in I kind of look at it like a sabermetrics for us, which is or a QBR rating. It's an algorithm we put in about 5 or 10 really Q score quants. So engagement and comments and sharing and views and likes and posts. There's so many things into it. And then the listening of how that allows us to inform what influencers are making a dent, how are they driving relationships with our clients beyond just a click. You guys right now are getting showered with FanDuel and DraftKings. I don't know if anybody's into fantasy, but these guys are spending a ridiculous amount of money, $20 million a week alone on trying to get their, and any creators here can sign up and be in their ambassador program right away. They all work on CPA. So it's the idea of trying to treat it also like a CPA versus how to deal with attribution modeling is also very complex, because creator modeling is attribution modeling. It's branding and not an acquisition metric. So sorry, but a long answer to your question, but it's a complex question, and our approach has been developing a proprietary system that's within ION that allows us to manage those analytics, and it's ongoing and it's monstrative. It's a massive amount of information.
So to kind of circle back to the start of the question, so do you take all this, not to oversimplify it, but you take all this data and say, oh, we think Jeff's going to be a star because he's got these likes and subscribers and tweets about him and clout score and whatever?
Yeah, you're able to take there's like data stacks like Pixabilities or Tubulars that will help you do some early discovery. Most MCNs have them on their platform. From there, then you do all your social listening, determine if they're on brand and on strategy. Right? We have a lot of clients we have to make sure we're holding their brand integrity in line, and as well as our own tool sets to determine, all right, here's the listening brief and here's what the audience is talking about. The other side of it is, so brands will have 4 or 5 pillars they really want you to talk about. Nike will want you to talk about your personal journey. They'll want you to talk about your performance. They'll want you to talk about the idea that the athlete's in all of us. So they're going to have pillars their advertising's around. The actual 15 things being talked about have nothing to do with those pillars. Those 15 things are actually what creators can really help leverage up. You need a tool to be able to hand that box over to your creators and say, let's develop a story around this because this is what people are talking about. That is the social science that you have to bring to the table if brands really want to make influencers the way they want to have relationships with other media partners. That's part of it.
Jeff, thoughts on data?
I mean, I think Chris nailed it, to be honest, and a lot of ways that we're also looking at how we're approaching campaigns. But I think another way to think about data and insights and kind of how we're doing it, using it at Fullscreen is, everybody, a lot of people know us as, a media company that works and supports these creators and creates, does brand integrations with them and creates content with them. They also, a lot of people don't realize that we actually manage the YouTube channels for over 60 brands, so over about 250 different channels across YouTube. So everyone from Mattel to NBC to Fox, GE, Whole Foods, to across the board. And what we're doing on that is really taking these best practices and the learnings that the creators have seen to really grow their channels, grow their subscribers, grow their views, and applying that to the brand landscape and really helping brands take advantage of that and grow their presence on YouTube accordingly. So that's a piece of what we do, but through that, we're getting so much data and insights as for these brands as to who's consuming their content, what types of content are they consuming most, even down to like what thumbnails are working best and that sort of thing, as well as what's the cross-visitation that's happening across creator channels. So that really starts to inform how we're working with the brands on when we're working to choose creator lists or influencer lists that we're going to do, whether it's for integrations or for media buys or creating lookalike targeting so that we can help inform TrueView buys and other types of media buys. So I think that that's another way that we're collecting data and insights and really making sure that's informing the campaigns that we're working on with brands.
Brad, any thoughts on this piece or?
Nothing much to add other than
Okay.
I use data when I'm selling my clients to whomever I'm selling them to, a brand or a content creator or another content creator or to a media partner. So
So if I'm a creator, sort of, we've said that there are a large chunk of people here are creators, programmers, whatever. Is there data that they could use to say, oh, well, PewDiePie does this, Michelle Phan does makeup, this Fine Brothers do whatever. It's like, here's a unserved, based on data or some sort of, here's an unserved area that I could be creating content around and therefore dive into the YouTube ecosystem and make money? Or is it not that easy?
I don't know if that data exists or if that data is accessible to
The data of what's not being made.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's a question probably for all of these guys. I mean, they're creators. There was 25, 30 people raise their hand on creators. So I know your every half hour of content that's posted, I know you guys are spending 10 hours getting that all up and running and managing the system and bringing in the proper tracking and rethreading across your platforms. I mean, I have a lot of respect for what they do and how much time they put into it, and don't change that. So that's not my bailiwick. That's their full-time job, and want them to do their job full-time for sure. So I don't necessarily have any insight on how creators managing their channels. It's more you guys.
As a consumer, have you ever sort of been there checking out YouTube or some other service and been like, gee, I wish I could find video about how to make a whatever?
well, that you can find.
I know.
I have no trouble with that, yeah.
I found how to fry an egg. Rebecca, data?
Yeah.
I mean, America's Funniest Home Videos, I mean, I think sort of the data goes back, which is, however long the show's been on the air, 50 years, to TV ratings. It's been a long time, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time. The way we use our data is to better tell our story, just like these guys said. We also use it to make smart business decisions. Where should we go next? So I really don't think I'm going to hit anything they haven't hit already. I will say on the creator side, I think the best way to use your data is to figure out where to focus. You know, what is doing really well, where should you put your energy, see what's succeeding versus other things. Are people responding to a certain niche more?
So let me ask a question about sort of subscription. Jeff, to go back a little bit to your full screen SVOD service and other SVOD services that are out there. I mean, you could probably name 10 more than I can name now, but certainly Vessel has an SVOD service where they're trying to bring in YouTube creators and put them behind a 3-day exclusive window. There's Vimeo. There's obviously YouTube. We talked about it's going to launch a service on Wednesday. There's Hulu Plus. There's sort of people in the middle. Again, you could probably name 10 more. It seems like everybody's NBC announced a comedy service. Some stuff that's been on television from the library and some new stuff. So kind of my question is, what is your feeling about sort of the SVOD ecosystem in general, and then more specifically, how many can an individual person pay for before they're like, you know what, cable's better. Cable's a better deal.
I mean, I think with SVOD, there's going to be a lot to service a lot of different niche audiences and demographics, and you're going to continue to see that. You know, Otter Media, who owns a majority stake in Fullscreen, also owns Crunchyroll, which is the largest OTT service for anime, for example. You know, Fullscreen's approach is certainly going to be more within that millennial category and creating something that we see as a personal experience and a personal content consumption experience. So, and then with that partnership, with Otter Media and with AT&T and that type of distribution, I think there's just a lot of things coming together there. So I think you're going to see, how much reach and scale you can have with your service, how you can create it as a platform that's personal and engaging to that user, and then how you can truly serve that niche audience. So I think as people start to perfect that or perfect that model, you're going to see a lot more of them cropping up, and they're going to be, as I said, servicing specific demographics, specific niches. I can't comment on the answer about how many it takes to where cable becomes more cost efficient, but that's my take on it.
I think Vessel has some serious issues. I think Vessel is destined for failure personally because they don't really. Well, first of all,
Brad, they raised $130 million.
Doesn't matter what they raise.
Number.
They're not getting the kind of traction among consumers, I don't believe, and the failure of Vessel is really the disconnect on the social front, and that's the one thing about YouTube that they've sort of ignored, which is within those creators, there's a social thing happening among all of their fans, and they've segmented those. Vessel has segmented those, and so you miss that social part, and that's really, I think, a key flaw in what they're doing.
And so, and you said it's a failure. So does that mean that as soon as they run out of money in a year, 2 years, after all the marketing and other expenses, they're
they may pivot.
done?
They may pivot and figure out some other way to do what they're trying to do. The idea of a subscription service for sort of early access might not be the exact way to go. It might be some other way they're going to. It's hard to say what they're going to do, but to me, this way that they're doing it is not successful.
Chris,
No comment.
investing in Vessel, long.
No, I know. I'm just excited about the new host of Funniest Most Videos. So, yes.
That was a non-answer. Non-answer.
It's not my expertise.
Did you have a point of view on the number of these subscription services and how they grow long term? And
I'm really excited about it, but I don't have it's not my expertise, so I don't want to speak out of school. But I could tell you for our clients, we're dealing with two extremes. We deal with clients that are on the top of the funnel, which is trying to drive awareness to go conversion, and the amount of media vehicles available and where we're dealing with there's more to choose from than the dollars we have to spend. And the other side, the bottom up, which is social and what's happened the last 8 or 10 years to have a one-to-one relationship with our consumers like never before, and using that opportunity to try to move a different type of funnel from those who are really passionate evangelists. A lot of the creators here have a lot of that power that are allowing to drive that That's a different type of funneling. So we're dealing with traditional media as well as the social media aspect to really fine tune the opportunity of balance for performance for our clients, and performance ultimately is measured by sales. So we're taking a very productive and accountable way of it. We'll test a lot of these platforms and constantly test. I can tell you right now that any of the platforms that we're talking about, they're all being tested, but no one's like, nothing's been highly successful.
So would you recommend to a brand that has a devoted fan base and great video, and I'll sort of throw out two examples, say like GoPro and Red Bull, that they go into this sort of niche subscription video space, or are they better off because they're so big and so well known?
They're getting it for, I mean, those are two examples that actually are of entities that have there's free marketing. They do not need someone like us, maybe any of us, to sell their products. So Red Bull and GoPro is fabulous in how they've been able to put their product in the hands of our everyday lives by no other reason than just being there at that time. That's just really powerful. So bravo to both those companies, and they do a great job. So
Are you volunteering to jump from space for the next Red Bull?
I'll probably have to get in line for that, but no, they do a great job. And we've partnered with Red Bull Media House. They've got a great platform as well to get access to. And GoPro, I think, is making some significant changes in their business model very shortly.
Okay, meaning what?
I just think they're making some changes to their business model. I think what you're talking about in terms of subscriber, in terms of content creation, I think there's a great platform there for content creation that they have at this point been 100% on the consumer side, and I could see their product going into a direction where they're starting to really embrace that.
Okay. Folks, we have about a half an hour left, so any questions, feel free, raise your hand, wave, anything. We'll keep going. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you've been talking, it seems to me, about marketing to millennials, but I'm creating it in a certain different. Are people interested in other age groups? Are people interested in reaching other age groups?
Yeah. Fabulous. No, one of our clients, I don't want to sound ageist at all, and we deal with a lot of different age segmentations. I think when we talk about media consumption, millennials just seem to be a target for a lot of the more core brands. But one of our other clientele is City of Hope, and it's a very significant effort right now in terms of trying to build relationships. Cancer actually is across all age demographics, but there is a higher side in that space. They have a whole new marketing group over there that's talking about how to get relationship, how to get information. So, whether you're 80 or 8, the platform by which you're searching on and the ability to be apt to discover answers and questions through YouTube or any social platform is a big deal. So there's a space for every age and every type of content creation out there for sure. I think we did a poll. There's a research data on the top 25 content. I always thought video gaming was like top 5. It's like 20. I think food is number 1. Jewelry, automotive. There's a lot of areas that are health and fitness and wellness. So that's just as robust of a category as others. I think the area today that we're talking about more is just because some of those ones have a lot more impressions generated, a lot more noise is out there on that. That doesn't mean that noise is where all the money's at, though.
And do you think that maybe there'll be more impressions with a variety of creators as a variety of creators come into this space? Seems like initially, everybody was young who was creating, and I think that's not the case.
Yeah, no, I mean, what about? Yeah, I'm sure you've got.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're going to see the platform age as these creators are aging as well. And I think you already, to Chris's point, there are great categories and great buckets to where you can go if you're going after older demographics, even across YouTube. I think a great example of a brand who's embraced YouTube for older audiences is AARP, who has come in and done some really cool programs, not just creating their own content, but integrating with creators. Like, they created a show with George Takei that was very successful as well. So I think there's a lot of examples of brands out there that are targeting older demographics that have been very successful with YouTube.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm interested in being kind of a persona of a 6-month public information campaign that's funny. So I just wanted to get any suggestions about that.
Say that again?
creating content, like YouTube content, possibly Facebook, possibly BuzzFeed, you know, kind of coming at it from different angles. But it's a pressing issue that's going to be going over the next 6 months. So I just wanted to know if you had any directional stuff.
You're the talent man.
Brad? Throw that to Brad.
Can you give me a little more information? I'm not really 100% certain. Like, you want to create some content. Are you looking
Yeah.
for like a distribution platform, or are you looking for, what?
Well, yesterday I went and bought the URL Storm Diva because I'm interested. I think people are scared shitless about El Nino, and I just want to do like fun programming and talk to roofers and talk to like, you know, the Watershed Council and talk, you know, it's different things that I think people are interested in over this period of time. We don't know what's going to happen, and people are fearful. I know I'm afraid, so I think it could be a fun way to kind of give people information and give them a place to go.
Sponsored by Home Depot.
Yeah, I've already sold full screen enough on this panel, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards.
All right, so talk to him afterwards. Let me talk a little bit about mobile and creating content for mobile. Again, most content is, you know, created for any screen or the best available screen. But if you look at sort of all the reports, and I sort of specifically think about the Mary Meeker report that came out in May that talked about the rise of vertical viewing. Sort of traditional TV people and movie people think of sort of 16:9 aspect ratio and sort of more vertical viewing. And again, I talk about sort of the other platforms, Snapchat and others, where the Periscope, where the viewing is better or made for vertical viewing. So combination of, the question is a combination of, are you guiding your partners, customers, creators, friends, relatives to make content for specifically for mobile and vertical viewing? And if so, how and why? Anyone? Jeff?
I honestly don't have a perspective.
Okay.
Okay, I do on this one.
Rebecca?
So that
Anyone
is
here?
the way these apps are created. Snapchat is a great one. Periscope, Vine, with vertical content creation. I have told my TV creators on the TV side to get over it. You know, they're going to have to put curtains on everything because those are the kinds of submissions that we're getting. And when I say curtains, I mean like you see them on Ellen, you see it on AFE all the time, where they're blurring the background to fill the 16:9 ratio. I think production companies, I think television shows, I think media companies that start thinking of a way to integrate both the flat screen and the mobile are going to win, whoever figures that one out, because it's not going to stop. People have to get over it. We used to do a whole thing where we used to say, you know, hold the phone side to side so the picture is wide. We used to have a whole thing. I said, get over it. You know what I mean? Everybody's shooting this way. So you just have to adapt. You absolutely have to adapt to the way the content's being created on phones. And the phone was meant to be held this way and shot this way.
I mean, it's certainly interesting in that as you're seeing everybody move multi-platform now, and even like, you know, the MCNs and everyone who's like working with brands and talking about how, you know, not just on YouTube, and we're looking at Snapchat and Periscope and across all these different social video platforms, is to think about, as you're creating this content, you can't just create something, say, that is going to live on YouTube and then just cut it down or just use that specific piece of content to also go on these types of platforms. And I think this reinforces that point, is that you've got to think about ahead of time where this content's going to live, and then that should drive the content strategy as you go through it, not just, you know, how you're shooting it, but the, you know, the tone and even the aspect ratio, I guess, and that sort of thing.
Chris? Point on mobile. Yes,
Again,
mobile, good.
maybe from a brand perspective, the CMO of Pepsi spoke 2 weeks ago. You know, his basic comment was,
All white guys.
yeah. And don't come in anymore and talk to me about pre-roll and talk to me about banner. You know, we're all familiar with banner blindness, but he was all over just native content creation, to your point, creating story, creating engagement, and taking an approach that I think for many traditional advertisers is hard to break the muscle on, break the leg on, so to speak, to reset and get ready to run again. So whether today is a vertical format, or yesterday was cinemagraphs, or tomorrow is VR or AR, that's just the reality we're in now. It moves really fast, and we're putting a ton of energy into just staying fast and failing fast to keep moving through it. So, that's how we're going at it.
What do you think about the live streaming vehicles like Periscope?
You're fabulous. We did
as a marketing tool, and give me an example of a interesting campaign.
Well, so we're at TwitchCon 3 weeks ago. I was just telling Jeff. So we decided to do 3 days straight of live streaming at TwitchCon. We're actually the only other news outlet there. A-List Daily is the agency newsletter we do daily. And so we decided to make it a live stream the entire time and seeing let's just get into it, right? We've been doing live streams, we've been doing events, we do a lot of stuff for our clients, but what was it like to just be consistently on? And it's completely different than production value that goes behind some of the pieces that are posted on there. I can tell you for Amazon and where they're going with that journey, I was really surprised how much of the time spent at Amazon talking about community as a content creation side of the journey and live streaming from a company that's so data analytic driven and using data analysts to determine what content to come up next versus letting the community drive that and put that hands. It's a really interesting marriage between the two. So for live streaming, it's almost like, 60, 70 years ago, right? The beginning of television was soap operas, which is really daily live shows or really done on the quick format.
Or branded entertainment.
Yeah, right. So it's going there again. I mean, the idea, because there's this idea, I don't know if anyone's a Michigan fan here, a Michigan State fan, but I was driving in this morning and all the news radio were talking about guys who ran out of the stadium to talk about how Michigan won the game. And because they had to get out to their feed. They weren't hardwired into the venue, but then they had to course correct right there, like, oh no, last 7 seconds they scored. It was one of the most incredible things that ever happened in a football match I've seen in a long time. So the idea of wanting it now and being fast and being agile and moving and making mistakes, but going forward, because of this just desire to just be there first and be out in front. So live streaming is only going to grow. And is only going to be a propensity by which brands start their engagement. I think the other side of the danger of that, is the value of branding and how you orchestrate it and how you manage it. So that's just going to require more of us to be on our game.
As a
than we
consumer
are.
of some of the live streaming, particularly on Periscope, so to go back to Brad's point at the beginning and talk about YouTube versus Facebook, the great thing about YouTube is search. On Periscope and some of the live streaming platforms, it seems fairly difficult to actually find something that is not only interesting but relevant to you at that moment.
I would. So we deal a lot of gaming. So we deal with World of Warcraft and Sony Online's, which is now Daybreak. But this idea about 12 years ago of virtual reality. So these are companies that are making billions of dollars, right? And Blizzard does this no better than most all. The idea of persistently connected gaming or relationships in the virtual world, people are getting married over there. Their relationships are there. Their reality is actually the world they don't live in. So you're virtually always on. So the idea of always on, so Periscope platform, there has something very interesting behaviorally. So when you go and load up your what's in my neighborhood, was kind of like checking out Channel 10 News, news at night at 10 o'clock. What's going on in my Periscope, I can see right then what's going on in Thailand with a tsunami that's hitting through there. Or I can actually see the local Oktoberfest down here at Alpine Village. Now, it's really the power of the communication in the hands that's driving some people crazy, where others you're just like, get on it and get moving into it. It's this self-coded little styrofoam protective cone for brands. That's what Pepsi's going at. They're saying we just got to, they're talking. It's a direct hit on Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola is 40 stories of brand monolith. Pepsi's, I'm going completely cross swatch of how I'm going to hit the landscape, no matter where it's at, to get our message into the consumer. It's just a belief. It's just a belief how you go. I don't look at it as a.
And Periscope, I think there's sort of a little bit of feeling of it being sort of more one-to-one, even though it's 1 to a couple hundred or 1 to 1,000. Just sort of a stupid, simple example. A couple of weeks ago, I was just playing with Periscope and watching Al Roker make himself a steak. And he's like in his kitchen talking to his dog. It's like him and the dog making a steak. And that was like 10 minutes. And people are making comments, and it'd be like, "Oh, Joey from the Bronx wants to know what kind of."
That's
beef
10
it
minutes
is."
time you spent less doing some other media platform. So there you go.
Or work.
Yeah, it'll work.
Jeff, you're feeling on live streaming?
A huge fan. I think gaming has certainly led that category there, and now with Periscope, you start to see it becoming more just across the general creator community. I think a cool way that we're seeing brands use live streaming and use Periscope specifically is just ways to create like real-time excitement around a campaign or around some content that's coming down the pipe later. For example, we worked with a major studio to promote a movie where we had different creators like Twames and Andrea Russett going and doing this simulation for like a haunted high school, horror type of example, right? And as they were going through this, of course, the reactions and everything was being filmed for later to be posted on YouTube or on Vine or whatever platform was native to them. But also at the time, they were doing live Periscope streams. So their fan base was able to experience that with them in real time, and then also know that later on down the line, they were going to be releasing these longer form, really cool, engaging videos that then just help to the success of the overall program. So I think that's a cool way that we're seeing brands use Periscope in conjunction with campaigns that are with these influencers and focused on content creation.
And Brad, do you look at these other sort of means, whether it's live video streaming or channels like Vimeo or I won't say Vessel, but others that may be more vibrant, as ways to promote your artists, creators on YouTube? Or do you look at sort of the one big ecosystem, and the more that the Fine Brothers or whoever's your client gets access to, or people watching, the better?
I sort of look at it as
Is it directed all to YouTube, or sort of touch all points?
Touch all points. And the thing that I like about live streaming is it's an enhanced connection with your audience. So on both sides, for the audience, it's an enhanced connection to the creator, and you can sort of have a live communication with them. And for the creator, it's the same. You get sort of instant feedback, and there's a strong bond that's built there. So I like all of it, and I like to sort of use the different platforms for different things. But I think they all work.
So we haven't really talked.
It's actually a quick.
Go ahead.
It's actually interesting. You mentioned you mentioned VidCon. We were talking VidCon earlier. You're familiar with VidCon? Yeah, right. So the 20,000 folks screaming, right? Teenage girls chasing around and trying to have this instant connection, because there's been still this kind of wall between them. Where at TwitchCon they had Broadcaster Alley, so they had 20 of the top streamers there. What was really interesting was it was a line. And it was almost business-like, and it was almost relationship-like. We're each going to get our turn up, because they're already having a relationship with them already there. So there's no holding back. The access is real time on the stream side, where on the content side, there's still that wall, right? That relationship side. So there is something different between the two fan bases of a streamer fan base or a live stream fan base than a content creating fan base, and it just kind of clicked right now as you were talking about. I noticed these two different atmospheres and just how they conduct themselves. So that was kind of interesting.
Okay, again, I got a question for these guys, and then I'll take your question. Give me a second. Let's talk about money a little bit. We talked about the SVOD model. Let's talk about the advertising model. YouTube is a huge advertising platform. Last year, they generated well over $4 billion in advertising. Again, that's a huge number, but it's 6%, barely 6% of Google's overall revenue. By all accounts, YouTube, as a standalone entity inside Alphabet or Google or whatever you want to call it, is not profitable or barely break even. So, are you guys individually making a profit based on your investment of time and everything else in YouTube? And B, does the fact that YouTube is not profitable matter? Start with Jeff.
Our approach is that the creator is the core of what we do. So we focus on how we can bring brands to the table to work with them across all sorts of platforms. So YouTube being profitable obviously ties into our business and the continuation of them being able to use us as a platform. But I think that looking at it from a platform-centric standpoint is not good from a long-term standpoint for us to make money and for us to build a business. And again, that's why we look at the creator of the core of what we do, and then whatever platform they're most successful on, or we see best for that campaign, that's what we're going to focus on. That's how we're going to focus integrations. And
so I would assume the Fine Brothers, if you believe the Forbes number at $8.5 million a year, and you work with them at Fullscreen, I would assume that they're profitable. But if you look at sort of your list of 100 or 200 creators, are they all profitable, or 80%, or what do you think is a reasonable number?
I don't have the numbers on the profitability of the creators and wouldn't want to comment on that.
Okay. Brad?
I think YouTube is,
Who's making money?
the creators are certainly making money, and I think, YouTube, it's hard to believe that if when their numbers are over 2 billion or whatever it is, that they're not making money, but they're not. So I don't know. I'm
4
not-
billion in revenue total. They're not making money.
Well, we can't comment on companies'
Right, I mean,
financial
exactly,
operations.
we
I
don't
mean,
know.
so there's loss leaders across the board, but those leaders allow them to operate competitively against other forces of nature, right? Procter and Gamble and General Mills do the same practices. But I think your question is about, if you're also about making money, I will say that from our analytics, the decay curve is quite steep. So there is the upper 5%. It's just talking business model. MCN's business model is signing contracts with the upper 5% because that's where everyone makes money. It's not on the lower 5%. There's a nurture and a nature aspect of their business, but they're running a business. So that's, if I'm wearing my MCN hat right now or my talent manager hat, that's just how business works. So the rest are, do they generate revenue? Absolutely. Are they profitable? Are they paying for their mortgage and their house and their family and everything that's going there? Probably not. A lot of them are not. I mean, they have to do multiple things. I had to work 3 jobs in college to get through college. So that's just what you have to do. But the passion, those that are most passionate, you want to reward them. You want to embrace them. So there is something even more genuine and authentic on that. So I actually like to, what we know, a different way we look at it as well with some of the upper 5% of the top talent is they drive an amazing amount of awareness. On the flip side, the lower 80%, their engagement by far kicks their ass. It just does. But I need to get 100 of them to achieve the kind of results that the 5 get. But the 5 are making all the money. So from a modeling standpoint, you're taking about. So there's compensation to be had. It's just how you split the pie up differently, and that is the debate that's going on right now. And so the other debate you're asking on YouTube is YouTube's changing their compensation and their modeling, not only with their partners but with the talent. It's really a big deal. And some of these people are just one people, so they don't have business analysts and lawyers and accountants figuring out how they manage it. And that's another part of managing that relationship. These people it's a sea of entrepreneurs, and it's a pretty exciting time. But it's a tough question to answer from a straight who's making money and who's not making money. I think from a creator standpoint, I don't know. There's 25 creators here. How many consider themselves fully profitable and doing awesome? Sweet, one.
You're profitable.
Of 25 of them.
Go ahead. You got a question, sir?
Oh, that was a question. None. Nice question. You made everyone feel terrible right now.
Actually, it's both.
Uh,
I actually do make my living making and selling animated series for really big companies. So,
Cool.
Comedy Central and Defy and so that's good. I mean, I'm going to continue to do that. At the same time, I see the struggles that they have in finding brands to support the shows. And they're huge corporations. They're way bigger than I will ever be.
Mhm.
I talk to the Smosh guys, and they go, they tell me that if they were starting now, they would, never be successes. And that was 3 years ago. So I would love to be able to go and say, yeah, I'll continue to make my living, making these shows for these big companies, but I have higher aspirations. I would love to get a Pepsi to support one of my shows so that I control the whole thing. But as a practical reality, how probable is that? Given again, for my worldview, my experience, that DreamWorks is struggling doing the same thing.
I've got 130 employees, so that's a medium-sized agency. But I could use another 100, but I can't afford another 100. The amount of energy put into orchestrating the brands and helping try to develop programs that the briefs we're getting now more than ever before are off the index of traditional thinking. They're right now the number 2 in command at Marriott for content creation is a gentleman named David Beebe. So David Beebe and his whole operations.
Former employee of Vin DeBona Productions.
There you go. Please take it from here, Rebecca. I just here's the softball. He's doing, they're reshaping how Marriott's marketing with content creation. And he's made 3 pieces of content right now with content creators you would never even have heard of.
The Bellboys or something.
The Two Bellman is one of them with a great production outfit, more of a parkour. But with the journey he's taking, I can tell you the first 6 months was like nail on chalkboard. And now the guy's picking up, I think, every piece of hardware around town for awards, but as well really changing it's culture changing. And so it's a culture change you're asking about. And you're saying, how do I get in there? That's a tough thing to follow, but don't stop following your passion of being a creator. It's we're mainly trying to empower brands to have relationships with consumers and do it in a way that's respectful with what the creators are doing and not change your stripes because we first started doing that. Yeah, I know you make that, but we want you to make this because this is on brand. It was painful, right? It took a while, 4 or 5 years ago. And that journey now is more putting the power back in your hand. And you know what? Believe it or not, you can pick up the phone and call these. The access is in today's marketplace is more open than ever before. And it's quite incredible how many companies work with how many brands and creators work together because you're networking. That's why you're all here today as well. So that, at the end of the day, you don't need to be beholden to, I don't hold the purse strings to anything. I'm as much managing relationships as all you are. So it's just an ongoing dialogue. It's just another thing to put on your plate to figure it on out. I mean, Shay Carl's has a great speech he does for makers about, him and his, he has a really twisted perspective of him and his family and making content and just how it all came about. And I think he said something similar about it. I'm not sure if that would have happened today if I'm there, but don't let that discourage you or don't let that, dissuade you. If anything, I think there's also a lot of other great opportunities for creators to be discovered.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say we're not going after the big guy. PewDiePie is too expensive. You know what I mean? We used Shay Carl once is very expensive. We're looking for the medium-sized creators to partner with and make new products. Sam Macaroni is a prime one. Not huge on subscribers, but huge on talent, this guy. And we're going out into the marketplace with different projects with him. So you don't have to be the upper echelon. You do have to, however, differentiate yourself somehow and show brands and production companies how you can bring them value. I think that's the key.
A couple more questions? Yes? No? All right. Let's, very kind of semi-hot topic, ad blockers and fraud together. So when you talk about whether you're Chris launching a campaign or Jeff, your creators, is fraud something you think about a lot about, or is it something that basically you say, okay, 10% is probably going to be fraud anyway, so what the hell? Or fall somewhere in the middle?
No, even though Tony's not here, he does. He has a company that deals early on with YouTube view and impressions. So what's great is you can track where everything is coming from, or for the most part, or let me phrase it differently. We don't usually work in any other mediums if I can't track it. So if I can't track it, that makes it very difficult to recommend to a client. So the idea of fraud, whether you're speaking of fraud from either false impressions type of fraud, so coming from Indonesia or
bots, whatever,
in areas that product isn't even available to be bought, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So really managing and understanding where the views are at. The other side, I'll make a quick comment on that, is we'll deal with European and North American, and sometimes there's a thinking that I just want North American content creators for North America and European for Europe, and you'll be surprised how much of the view and content is from, say, someone from Sweden or Finland or named PewDiePie's views are coming from North American audience spaces. So in theory, how creators and where your views, and I bet you some of your creators are probably like, who the hell is this watching my stuff? Like, where is this from, right? You probably don't even realize the idiosyncrasies of consumers and what we all love to watch and where they come from. So very judicious. It's great the tools there. Ad blockers is a real thing. Most mobile devices now, and there's going to be more ad blocking on most of the mobile platforms and the social side. it's already prevalent on the PC side. I talked earlier about banner blindness. We've really shifted away a lot from that element. That's a big discussion around native advertising because the advertising is within the contents of the creation. It's not a pre-roll. So that puts a lot of power in the hand of the creators out there and having that journey. You know, it's only going to continue to grow. So I don't. Is there a stat or any stat you have on ad? Is there something that with ad blocking that you?
I don't have a current e-marketer stat on ad blocking. I mean.
No, I think that point is why.
I've been surprised in looking at some of the stats about ad blocking just in the past couple of months that it's not insignificant. It's not like 1%. It's sort of in the double-digit percentages.
I think ad blocking as a whole for the digital advertising or interactive advertising industry is a big concern. I think as it applies to what a lot of us are doing in the creator space is it's less of an issue because to Chris's point, we're focusing on in-content integrations and product placement and endorsements and things that are happening within the actual content. So, you know, we're not having to deal with the fact of worrying about those being blocked by ad blockers.
Time for a question? Anyone? No? All right. You have closing thought?
Well, what I was just going to say is it's really simple. What Chris was saying, you know, I have these two women who I represent, and their number 2 market is Saudi Arabia, right? And it's an I found it fascinating, right? I mean, this is just only sort of responding to what you're saying. I think ad blockers, but number 2 market is Saudi Arabia. Number 3 market is Iraq, right? So, but it's interesting that, you know, the kind of content that sort of emanates from YouTube, it's music, it's comedy, but they have a very strong LGBT component to what they do, and so it's interesting that in that part of the world where it's really sort of taboo, that it's so popular on YouTube there, right? Because people can watch it, and just interesting to me that. But it does present other opportunities for monetization because in a lot of those markets, a lot of those places, YouTube isn't monetizing, but there are other opportunities to monetize, like live appearances and other things, you know, although I wouldn't send them to Saudi Arabia, but in other parts of the world, perhaps.
It's a separate business.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much. Great panel. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. There's another panel in here at 11:30, and have a great day.
Thank you. Well done, Bernie. Go by Bernie or is it Bernard?
Bernie.